So if you're anything like me, you see a new game come out, and it looks like fun, and a lot of people are playing it, and it's reviewing well, and you want to give it a shot, but then you see this number next to it. You think to yourself, how much am I going to have to catch up on in order to play this game? So let's talk about baggage in games.
Victory screech!
So I'm Ryan. Today I just wanted to talk about baggage in games, but I wanted to talk about it through a game that I thought handled it well. So first, let's start by defining baggage. Baggage is anything that you need to know in order to fully understand the plot. It's normal for series to have baggage because they continue stories. Baggage can be good or it can be bad. It's good because it brings fans back. You know, if your favorite game, favorite movie, favorite TV show is getting a sequel to whatever it had going on, then you're going to be excited because the storyline is continuing. It can be bad because it scares off newcomers, right? Like, nobody wants to jump in at season 8 of Game of Thrones. They want to go back to the very beginning. And this is a pretty general definition. There are plenty of series out there that don't have a ton of baggage. And let's be real, there are some games that handle baggage pretty poorly, and there's some games that handle it well. So let's talk about Devil May Cry. The latest Devil May Cry is the 5th entry in its series, and to be honest, there's quite a bit of baggage going into the story. Off rip, the game opens with the protagonist fighting a villain that they have a lot of history with. But I felt like this game handled the baggage pretty well for a couple of reasons. One thing that really keeps me from being fully engaged with the game is just info dumps, just information overload. There's a lot of different ways that information overload can occur, but there's two ways that really bug me. The first one is character overload. This happens when the series introduces all the characters that have shown up in the story at the same time. Me personally, I have trouble remembering anything that's not relevant to what's going on right now. So even though they might be introducing a character that was important in the previous game, if they're not that important to the plot right now, I'm going to forget their name. And that's just going to make me frustrated because they are heaving information that they expect me to remember on me all at once. This game does a good job of really just only introducing characters when they're important to the plot at the moment. So for example, in the opening scene, I think there's about 8 different characters that show up, but instead of introducing them to you all at once, it introduces them one by one, and if they're not relevant to the events that are happening right now, it doesn't even bother to tell you what their name is. It just acknowledges that they're there, and it keeps it moving. The other type of information overload is story overload. Now this is when the writers decide to just get you caught up with the plot all at once. I think the most recent example of this is Kingdom Hearts 3. It takes about an hour before you actually start playing the game because they're just heaving information for everything that you missed. I think a better way to go about this is only bring up elements of the story from previous games when it's relevant to the plot that's at hand. You know, if you tell me everything that's happened in the last 2 games right at the beginning of the game, I'm gonna forget what I need to know when that information is actually relevant and useful. Another way that baggage is brought into games is through gameplay and game mechanics. When games are around for a while, the control schemes and some of the various gameplay mechanics can become a part of the franchise's identity. For example, the early Resident Evil titles were known for tank controls and the awkward camera angles, right? Now, that stuff is great for fans of the series because that was what made the game unique for them, and that's the reason why they kept coming back. And it really did add to the atmosphere of the game. But eventually these things can become barriers that keep newcomers out. The amount of people that aren't willing to deal with the original Resident Evil games because of the tanks and the camera angles was enough to cause them to redo a lot of things in Resident Evil 4, which brought a whole new fan base into that game. Now, Devil May Cry is known for stringing combos together. I think the more combos you get, it builds your style points. And so this type of gameplay is encouraged through a somewhat intricate combat system. Instead of a typical brawler game where you mash one button to do light attacks, one button to do heavy attacks, and then maybe every once in a while you dodge or lock on. This game actually has a whole combo list that's more similar to something that you'd find in Street Fighter. Now, part of the fun of the game is being able to pull off these intricate combos, and they make you look cool while you're doing it, right? But they're pretty difficult. So in order to accommodate for newcomers, this latest entry of the game has what's called a simple control option, where it lets you play the game more like a typical brawler, but it will determine the right time to do the flashy moves for you, so you still feel pretty cool while you're playing the game. So yeah, those are just a few ways that baggage can sneak into gameplay, and those are a few solutions that I thought Devil May Cry deployed to handle baggage pretty well. Just a quick sidebar. One thing I've noticed lately is these long-running franchises and series are starting to get rid of numbers and go with subtitles instead. For example, instead of getting Spider-Man 1 and Spider-Man 2, this time we got Spider-Man Homecoming, and we're getting Spider-Man Far From Home. Instead of making Uncharted, what was it, 3.5, 4.5? They made Uncharted Lost Legacy. And I think switching over to these subtitles just makes it a little bit less intimidating to jump into these series. It's like, imagine if the latest Avengers movies, if instead of Infinity War and Endgame, it was like 20 and 20, Marvel, I guess Avengers 4 and Avengers 5. A lot less people would have watched it, but because it was Avengers Infinity War and there wasn't any affiliation to the previous Avengers movies, I'm assuming some people didn't feel the need to go back and watch the previous 3 in order to be able to keep up with the story that was being told in those movies. I think it's worth putting thought into things like this, simply because it's difficult enough to get people to play your game or watch your movie without it having a ton of baggage. Granted, there are some franchises that do keep the numbers, Final Fantasy, but they have to spend a lot of money in marketing to get people to understand that they don't need to play the last 15 games to be able to comprehend what's going on in the latest iteration. So yeah, these are just some things to think about. Let me know what you think. Peace.